So I have a confession to make to all of our Windows and Linux viewers. I sinned and bought myself a MacBook. But before you judge me, please let me explain. I don't just like it, I honestly believe that a lot of people would be happier with a Mac and save some money on top. So let's get right into it. As I said, I bought myself a MacBook, but not just any MacBook. I actually went with a 5-year-old one. I picked up the MacBook Pro with the M1 Max, and here's why that made more sense than the MacBook Neo for me. I had a relatively tight budget, and with RAM prices shooting through the roof, a new laptop was out of question. I had also sold my old PC and didn't want to spend a fortune on a new device when I knew I wouldn't even use its full performance. I found mine refurbished for 1,000 euros, which was a great deal. I literally picked a laptop in a worse condition, and the device has absolutely no serious damage on it. I think I was very lucky with it, but I really believe that choosing a lower tier device is smarter, because if it sucks, you can send it back within 30 days. A lot of people might think a 5-year-old MacBook is outdated and just doesn't run smoothly anymore. But you're so wrong. This thing packs a 10-core CPU and a 24-core GPU that flies through every daily task I throw at it. The MacBook Neo only has 6 CPU cores and only 5 GPU cores, which would definitely not be enough for my workflow. And on top of that, 1,000 euros for this level of build quality and performance. And that's where the value story really starts, and it only gets better from here. I went with the 32GB RAM version, and I seriously pushed this thing to its absolute limits. I only once managed to get the RAM completely full to the point where it had to use swap. And to be fair, that was not a real-life scenario at all. I was running a local AI model while cutting a video, with Safari tabs and Spotify open at the same time, so make of that what you will. The point is, this machine manages 32GB of RAM extremely smartly and efficiently. The 8GB of RAM on the MacBook Neo would be full so fast, and that's definitely another reason why I didn't go with it. Now the only real minus point storage. I went with the 512GB version to save money and honestly thought it would become a bigger problem than it actually is. The solution? I simply use an external SSD. It's obviously nowhere near as fast as the internal storage, but for my use case, it's more than enough. And with one cable, it's ready to go, but more on the charging situation in just a bit. Let's get to the real-life performance of the M1 Max. What I primarily use this device for is video editing for this YouTube channel, writing scripts, writing emails, and some light 3D modeling. Starting with video editing, I usually work in 1080p or 4K with the playback resolution set to maximum. My projects always have multiple layers, a good amount of effects, and transitions throughout. Absolutely no problems whatsoever. The only slight issue I ever had was when I left a project file open for about a week straight without restarting once. In that case, Premiere did crash on me, but honestly I don't blame it, that was completely my fault. Writing scripts, answering emails, listening to music, everyday browsing, obviously no issue at all. What I actually found really comfortable is doing all of that on the go. Since I went with the 14-inch model, I can take it literally anywhere and just start working, which brings me to the next point. The light 3D modeling side of things mainly comes from getting a new 3D printer and editing files or creating simple new designs, also no problem as expected. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a dedicated video about my new printer. Now let's talk about battery life, because this is honestly one of the biggest reasons I went with the MacBook, and one of the things that makes this 5-year-old device still feel completely relevant today. I use less than 50% of my battery for 6 hours of screen time doing everyday tasks. No video editing, just normal use. But still, those numbers are mind-blowing if you're coming from a Windows laptop. When I am editing videos on battery, I can comfortably get 4 to 6 hours depending on how heavy the workflow is. Overall, I genuinely cannot get this thing fully empty in a normal day of use. I probably could have gotten the same or even better battery life on a MacBook Neo, but it doesn't make any sense if the performance isn't enough. But here's something that honestly impressed me even more than the active battery life: the standby. If you know Windows laptops, you know the drill. You close the lid, come back 2 hours later, and somehow lost 20% battery. That just doesn't happen here. I close this thing, come back the next morning, and the battery is at basically the same percentage. It feels like it barely drains at all in standby. That's just not something I was used to. And keep in mind, this battery is 5 years old. I'm currently sitting at 93% capacity, which means it has barely degraded at all. For a device this age, that's genuinely impressive, and just shows how well Apple manages battery health long term. Once it does need charging though, that's where you want the right charger. It supports MagSafe and USB-C, and this is exactly where our sponsor comes in. The EU just changed the rules. Laptops no longer have to include a charger in the box, and honestly, that's your chance to get something way better. The EU gave you the choice, Anker gives you the power. This is the Anker 140 watt 4-port charger. Anker kindly sent us a few of their newest products, so this segment is sponsored by them. But as always, everything you hear is still my own opinion. This is the world's first 140 watt 4-port smart display GaN charger. 69 by 69 by 36 millimeters. GaN technology packs 140 watts into something that actually fits in your pocket. Small size, no compromises on power. And speaking of power, the live display shows per port wattage, total draw and temperature in real time. Actually useful for spotting faulty cables instantly. Now what really makes this thing stand out is ActiveShield 2.0. It performs 3 million safety checks per day, continuously monitors temperature, and automatically adjusts power output if things get too warm. That protects your devices, keeps the charger running stable, and actually extends its lifespan over time. And that power goes somewhere useful. A single USB-C port delivers up to 140 watts, enough to charge a MacBook Pro 16-inch M3 Pro from 0 to 50% in just 25 minutes. The other ports handle your phone and earbuds simultaneously. And it's smart about distribution too. Unplug one device, the others instantly get more power. But if you want to go even smaller, the Nano 100 watts has the same smart display and dual gun chips in an even more compact package. And if you still want to go smaller, the Nano 70 watts is a seriously compact 3-port charger with dual gun for cool operation. And for the minimalists, the single port 100 watt Nano. If you're charging a laptop on the go, this is the one. All 4 are available on Amazon and on the Anker official website. They are currently on sale, all links are in the description. And now let's get back to the video. Now let's talk about the display. It's a 14-inch liquid retina screen with excellent color accuracy. You can watch movies, edit videos, or just browse. It's a true all-rounder. It also runs at 120 Hz, which makes everything feel incredibly smooth in day-to-day use. The MacBook Neo, on the other hand, would have only had a 60 Hz screen with a not quite as good color accuracy. One thing to keep in mind though, if you're into heavy gaming, I have to disappoint you. macOS is genuinely restrictive in that regard, and it's not where this machine shines. Now the next point honestly blew me away the first time I noticed it, and that's the speakers. I'm really not an audio expert, but this thing sounds incredible. I'm not talking about a little better than your average Windows laptop. I would literally put this next to a decent sized JBL speaker and tell you it holds its own, but have a listen for yourself. More clarity, more depth, just better across the board. So, to wrap this up, the speakers are incredible, the display is beautiful, the performance is more than enough for everything I do, and the battery is in a league of its own. All of that for 1,000 euros refurbished. That's the value story here, and 5 years in this chip is still genuinely competitive. Now one more thing worth mentioning. If you're watching this and thinking about getting into the Mac ecosystem for the first time, getting a refurbed MacBook is actually a great way to get into the ecosystem. Of course, you could also get a MacBook Neo, but in my opinion, you simply get a lot more performance for your money on an M1 Max or Pro than on the MacBook Neo. However, if you don't need a lot of performance or want to keep it even cheaper, the MacBook Neo is an absolute no-brainer. But if you really want a MacBook Neo, you should hurry up because Apple is actually running out of chips. Circling back to the ecosystem aspect. If you already own an iPhone or an iPad, switching to a MacBook just makes everything click. AirDrop, handoff, iMessage on your laptop, copy something on your phone and paste it directly on your Mac. It all just works seamlessly together. So whether you go the refurbished M1 Max route like I did, or jump on the new MacBook Neo, I think a lot of you would genuinely be happier on a Mac than you expect. Let me know in the comments what you're currently running and whether you're considering the switch. I'd love to hear it. See you in the next one.